So please welcome to the stage, Ethan Farlow. All right, so I'm back again, but then I'm going to leave for a while, so you don't have to keep hearing from me. So we want to do an AI talk, but we wanted to do it a little bit different. So a lot of AI talks, if you guys have ever watched any of the AI talks, especially ChatGPT, something like that, they always start at, let's go through ChatGPT and let me show you how it writes a song. Let me show you how it creates an email, whatever it may be. This talk's going to be a little bit different. So just a show of hands, how many people have used ChatGPT yourself? You've went in, you've asked it questions. Okay, good. That's awesome. Every time I ask that question in a presentation, more and more hands are going up. If you've never used ChatGPT, I recommend going there and play around with it. It is pretty cool. As I was saying, this presentation is going to be different. We have a lot of the presentations like I talked about. Here's how you use it. Here's the best way to get a prompt, that sort of thing. Go out to the resource page on our website. You guys can see it there. But this talk is going to be a little bit different. So if you turn to page 8 in your workbook, you'll see that we're going to go over these 6 tools. Now, every single one of these tools, you'll notice at the bottom, there is a little icon, and we have matched up those icons with the tools. So you'll see what's going to save you time, what's going to be a content creation, whatever it may be. Here's the agenda. The agenda, again, we flipped it on its head. Most people start at the content creation. They start at ChatGPT, something like that. The problem with that I have seen is a lot of CEOs, a lot of office managers, they get into this AI talk, and the first thing they do is say, hey, AI can create this really cool picture, or it can create this really good marketing brief. And CEOs and office managers go, I don't care about this. This whole thing should have been for marketing. It shouldn't have been for me. So my goal today is to show you some time-saving tools with AI first, so you can see that part. Then we'll go into the content creation just a little bit, but I wanted to focus more on the time-saving and other pieces. The first tool that we're going to go into is Perplexity. Perplexity, as you guys can see, it is an AI search engine, but it's designed to give you a conversational type answer instead of just a list of web pages like Google does. On Google, if we asked it, I'm looking for an alarm system company for Greensboro. That's a typical search that I would do in Google. And when I do that, on the left-hand side, you'll see those are all the sponsored pieces. So if it says sponsored, that means that company is paying a lot of money to Google to be in front of you. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just business. But then on the right-hand side is when we kept scrolling down, you'll see all of the organic type searches, or what the organic results. Now, what would typically happen if you're looking for an alarm system company, you're going to open up, okay, there's 5 different companies. I'm going to right-click on every one. I'll open it in a new window. I'll spread it across my different screens, and I'm going to try to compare pros and cons. Well, with something like Perplexity, you can do this, the exact same prompt. You can ask it, it gives you an answer and says for small businesses, there's several options, here they are. And it gives you a brief description of each one. Now, the other thing that's nice is it does give you some related questions. So it says, hey, if you want to know more about these specific things, you can do this. I know Google is starting to do this now. When you do a normal Google search, it'll say, here's more information. But one thing that right now, I'm sure Google is trying their best to catch up on this, but one thing Google can't do is if I want to ask a custom question, I want to say, give me the pros and cons for these alarm companies. I don't want to do the research myself. It's going to give you pros and cons. And it listed out per thing. So think about that the next time you go to buy a car, the next time you go to compare IT companies, you go to compare whatever it is, or Lenovo versus HP or whatever it is. Typically, you're going to pull them both up on each screen and try to do the analysis yourself. I recommend using something like Perplexity. Again, it's free. You can pay for a version if you would like. Has some advanced features. One other thing that's nice there, you'll notice in the they've got little sources there. So you can see if you have a question about something, click that and it'll take you out to where Perplexity found that on the website. One other thing that I like about this is there are no advertisements on there. So you're not getting what people are paying to push to you. You're instead just getting a pros and cons list. So use Perplexity the next time you need to compare something. The next tool that I want to talk about is Fireflies. Something I should have said at the beginning of this presentation. None of these companies are paying us to say these things. So it's just tools that we use. There are other tools that are similar, so find what works for you. But don't think that we're pushing these because we're getting some sort of back-end kick. Maybe that's a good idea, Hunter, for later. But Fireflies. So it automatically records your meetings, transcribes them, and then can give you a summary. There is a free version, or you can pay for it. Some of the features or some of the things that I want to highlight here is you don't have to, if you sign up for something like Fireflies, and it then is allowed into your meeting so it can record them and transcribe them, you don't have to have that in every single meeting. Some people say, hey, I want you in every meeting, no matter what. I don't want to think about remembering to invite the artificial intelligence robot. Other people say, I don't want you in every meeting. I only want you in specific meetings. So you have options there. Once the AI robot joins the meeting, gets the transcription, so it's going to give you a summary of all the things that you guys talked about. It's a very nice summary. It makes it very easy to be able to copy and then send that out to whoever was on the meeting. One other thing that's also very beneficial about this is if you have something that is recording your meetings, it allows, at least for me, it allows me to focus on whoever is on the other side of that screen. I can listen to everything they're saying. I'm not trying to think about, okay, you asked me to do this, now I have to write it down. There's none of that. I'm focused on what you're saying, and we can just talk back and forth because I know that the AI tool is going to give me a task list. That task list is going to break it out by every person in the meeting that was speaking. So you can see right here, we did a cyber hero training, and this was our debrief, and Hunter had to ask Mike about a wired lapel, and I had to forward a survey email. It shows you what everybody needs to do. The other thing, and this is the final thing I'll talk about with Fireflies, is you have the ability, of course, to share that recording. So I don't know if you guys are like this, but I certainly am, where I have, unfortunately, too many meetings and not enough time in the day. I get invited often to our CEO. Maybe he's meeting with a new vendor. We're trying to figure out, do we want to use that vendor, whatever it may be, and I just simply can't make that meeting because I've got things that I need to do other than that. So I just asked the CEO, just make sure it's recorded, send it to me, and then I can search through the transcript and say, I want to know about cost, I want to know about features, I want to know about when they said this, whatever it may be. Of course, I can listen to the whole thing, but I can also just look at the parts that I want to see. For me, that's very beneficial and very time-saving. Now let's talk about Copilot. So show of hands in the room. How many of you have heard of Copilot or you've seen a Microsoft commercial? Okay, so a number of you. Microsoft is really, really good at letting you know that they have a new icon. It's called Copilot, and it's really cool. They'll create this really cool commercials and say you can do all these things, and then they don't really get into the nuts and bolts. For us, that's our whole position or our whole job here at ComTech is figure out what Microsoft's doing and then put it into regular language. So Microsoft started talking about Copilot, and I created a video. It's on YouTube. I created a video back in July. Me and a fellow tech went down to Florida, and we sat there for 3 grueling days from 7 a.m. until probably about 9 p.m. every night. And Microsoft talked about Copilot and talked about AI for 3 days. I'm here to give you the highlights, so you don't have to go and listen to that. In some ways, it was painful. In some ways, it was good. So as far as what's next at Microsoft, as I said, Copilot is Microsoft's version of AI. It is not OpenAI, which is the company that created ChatGPT. Microsoft does have a very tight relationship with that company, but this is a little bit different. Microsoft Copilot is built directly into your operating system, into Windows. It's also directly built into Word, Excel, that sort of thing. You'll see here in just a moment. I can't stress that enough, that it's built into those programs. That is very beneficial because then if you're in Outlook, you'll see here in a minute, if you're in Outlook and you're wanting to change an email, you no longer have to go out to ChatGPT and say, can you change this email? You can just say, change it right here. So it is a set time saver. There are some things to think about. There's some things that we want to consider. The first thing is, if you pay for Copilot, that is, if you pay for it, because there is a paid version, then that means that they do not use your data to train their models. So what that means is, if I'm at ComTech, I'm typing into Copilot, and I'm given financial information, I'm given certain information, there's no chance my competitor down the street is going to be able to get that. It's what Microsoft tells us. I'm telling you what Microsoft told me. They made a huge point to say this because with all of these companies, which this is a good disclaimer. I'll put a disclaimer out there. I was talking with a gentleman in the back, and I can't agree more that this whole presentation maybe needs a disclaimer, which is work with your management to think about what your policies are around using AI and what information people are supposed to be putting in there. What I mean by that is there's a lot of companies right now that say, hey, I don't want you using ChatGPT. I don't want you using any AI at all because I don't want you to put any of our information in there because I don't want any chance of that being put out on the web in some form. So talk with your management about that, and you guys decide what your policy is. The final thing I'll say on this that's a little bit of a caution is data permissions. Some of the stuff that I show here in a minute with Word and Excel, people get really excited about it, and they're like, I got to have this. This makes perfect sense. Well, keep in mind that data permissions are key. So here's what I mean by this, and I hope I'm not getting too deep into the weeds and getting too technical. If, let's say, Jimmy gets hired, he's trying to do his work, he comes to his manager and says, hey, I can't really get to this area that I need to inside of Microsoft SharePoint where we store all our files. And the office manager's super busy and says, okay, I'm just going to give you full access. They just don't think about it. They're just like, I don't have time for this to give you access to just that one folder. I'm just going to give you full access. Well, that can go, it can be that way for a couple of years. And Jimmy doesn't know, oh, I actually have full access to the accounting folder, to the HR folder, to whatever it may be. With a tool like Copilot, it's a little different. Now Jimmy doesn't have to know, I need to navigate over here to this place in SharePoint to be able to see the accounting folder. He doesn't know how to do that. But he could go into something like to Copilot and say, what's the salary of the CEO? What's the salary of so-and-so? And the AI assistant's going to go, hey, you have access to that. Here's the information. This is where you find it. So we just want to be careful. We want to really check our data permissions before we turn something like this on. So now Microsoft does have, on Microsoft's behalf, Microsoft does have a number of tools that are built in to try to prevent that. Because I try to trick this thing as best I can. So I go in there and say, because I know I have access to it, and I say, what's the salary of this particular person? And typically it'll come back and say, hey, you really shouldn't be asking that. If you're asking that, you need to go speak with HR. Here's HR's email. So it tries to stop me, but if you know your way around it, you can worm your way in. So we just want to be careful. Again, it goes by the permissions that you guys have right now. If that person didn't have access to the accounting folder, it's just going to constantly say no. Like, you just can't have that information. You don't have access to it. With Copilot, I wanted to highlight a couple of small things. In Outlook, let's say you go on vacation, you come back, and you've got a ton of emails. Maybe you got added to an email chain. Maybe you have 70-some thousand emails unread. You got added to an email chain, and it's just like super long. It's so easy to just go in there and click summarize, and it'll give you a summary of everything. That way you don't have to read every single one. If you're drafting an email, you have the ability to click it right there and say, Hey, reword this for me. A good example here is I may have received an email and I reply back, thanks a bunch for sending this, something like that. That's pretty much all I'm going to say. And what it is going to do, or what the goal is here, is since it can see all of my previous emails, it knows, I know a lot of you've emailed with me before. I'm not the most formal person, especially emailing. I have a tendency to say, hey man, or buddy, or something like that. But it looks at all of my previous emails and says, Ethan, you typically respond back with, instead of thanks so much for sending this information, it's going to be, hey man, I hope you're doing well. Thanks so much for sending this information. Let's catch up next week, whatever. You still have to read it. You don't want to just click it and say, okay, go. But it can add a lot of context because it knows how you email. It's pretty cool. With Word, you have the option. It's built right into there. I can see where somebody's going to go in here as an office manager and say, I've got a new position. Here's the rough salary. And the position is doing this. Give me a job application that you can create, and it'll go and create the job application. Excel, I'm seeing more financial people use this. Again, check it, but I am seeing where some people say, okay, here's an Excel spreadsheet, here's sales, here's profit, here's all these things for the last 2 years. You can go in and ask it questions. Show me the most profitable item in the last 2 years. Create a graph for net profit for the last 5 years. You can ask it these things and make it quite easy if you don't know your way around Excel. And even if you do, it's going to give you some tips to help. With PowerPoint, let's say you went into Word. You said, okay, I'm going to do a presentation about AI. I want to highlight these 5 tools. I didn't do this, by the way, but you go into Word and you say, I want to do that. Create me a draft. It creates a draft. It creates an outline. You then take that outline from Word. You go into PowerPoint and say, create a PowerPoint presentation based on that Word document. And I want you to have speaker notes. I want you to have pictures. And I want it to look like Guardians of the Galaxy, whatever it may be. And it will go in a minute or so. PowerPoint will go and create the entire presentation for you with speaker notes and everything. Again, you're going to want to read it, but it is pretty cool. Now, I wanted to finish this part with Copilot. I wanted to finish it on what you guys are probably going to be seeing, if you haven't seen it already, is AI-ready machines. So AI-ready machines, they are coming. They're actually here. I know HP and Dell, those guys are advertising AI-ready machines. That seemed a little strange to me because when I think about AI-ready machines, I'm like, can't you just open up ChatGPT in a web browser? Like every machine can do that. What is this? Well, what it is they have created a new piece of hardware called an NPU, neural processing unit, that is going into these new machines. It's specifically designed to do AI tasks. So your typical machine, if you ask it to do an AI task, the CPU and all the normal pieces in a computer, it's intensive for it. It doesn't know how to do it well. So it slows the whole computer down. Well, these new machines, they do better. An example there is right now, this is still a little ways off, but right now if you open up Microsoft Teams, you have your video come on, you have to tell it, I want you to blur the background. You then open up Zoom. The video's on, you look in the background, it's not blurred because it's a different application. You have to tell it, blur the background. With these new AI-ready machines, you're going to be able to say, blur the background. Every time my computer comes on, the background needs to be blurred. 100% of the time, I don't care what application I'm using. That way there's no chance that anyone can see, my messy house behind me. So that sort of task is designed for these NPUs. The other thing Microsoft made a big deal out of is they are going to put a Copilot button on the keyboard. Now, this is big because this is pretty much the first change to the Microsoft keyboard in about 20 years. But that goes to show you how much they think this thing is going to be they really believe that you're going to sit down every day and you're going to be one click away from your AI assistant, and they're pretty excited about that. There's multiple things that we got to think about, but there's one serious hindrance right now. There's somewhere around 30 to 50% more. That's the price tag on these items. ComTech at this moment is not recommending these just because we're starting to play with them, but just because I'm not seeing a 30 to 50% bump in productivity right now. I'm just not seeing it. So it's financially, it's not worth it. But if you want to play with them, you can definitely talk to us. We can get you one. They're just a little more pricey. Let's talk about ChatGPT. As I said, we're not going to go super, super deep. We're certainly not going to talk about this is exactly how you use it. But I do want to give you some of the features that I don't see used as often. So if you don't know what ChatGPT is, as you can see, it's a Swiss Army knife, helps answer questions, draft emails. You could pretty much ask it any question you want. And it is either free or it's up to $20 a month. Keep in mind, all of these items that are free, if it's free, then that means that you're helping train their models. You want to be super careful about what you put in there. On ChatGPT, if you go in the top right, if you click on your little icon, you can click Customize ChatGPT. If you click that, you agree to it, it's going to say, this is what we recommend you throw in there. Hey, I'm a business called GSO Law. We specialize in intellectual property law, whatever your business is. Then you want to give it a little bit more context. You want to say, our ideal client is a startup or early stage company, whatever it may be. Another example is if you're an ear, nose, and throat place. We offer comprehensive allergy testing, and our ideal client is someone experiencing persistent allergy symptoms, whatever it may be. The point is, when you customize these things, now ChatGPT is going to say, almost every question you ask me, I'm going to try to see who your clientele, who is the end person that's going to see this, and it's going to customize that response. And it works quite well. One of the other things in ChatGPT that I don't see used as often is the GPTs. So that stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformers. I'm going to refer to it as GPTs from this point forward. All it is ChatGPT it has a lot of information. I mean, it has information from business to personal to everything you can imagine. Well, these GPTs, like Planty that I'll talk about here, these GPTs are only fed information about that particular item. So with this one, let's say next year you get into the spring and you say, listen, I don't have a green thumb, but I really want to try to keep some plants alive in my house. I want to try this thing. You could go to ChatGPT and just ask it the generic question of how do I do this, what plants are best. But if you go into something like Planty, you're going to get more specific answers because it is only trained on how to keep plants alive or plant things. Excel is the same way. So there's a Word Excel or a Word expert, and there's an Excel expert. So it is designed specifically for what you're trying to do. For us, as you guys, if you look around, you'll notice we've got local government, we've got manufacturing, we've got healthcare, we've got a lot of different industries that we support here at ComTech. We have a GPT customized for every single one of the industries. That way, if we go to an industry event for a medical conference, we know that all of our marketing collateral is going to be specifically speaking to only the medical. We're not going to throw out words like clients, maybe for medical, we're going to say patients. Like that's how we're going to edit our language a little bit so that way we can get the best response. Now, I'm told from my marketing team, which I'm pretty excited about, that we're getting close to a custom GPT of myself, which I'm excited about. We'll see if we release it publicly. We don't know about that yet, but I do obviously a bunch of YouTube videos. I produce a lot of content. If I can take all of that content and get it inside of one thing and it can create me, then my team can now ask me a question when I'm not there. Now, I want to play with it, obviously, but I think it's got some potential. I'm excited about it. Content creation. So this is ending out this speech. So the content creation, as I said, this is where a lot of people start, but we're going to end here. The first tool I want to talk about is Canva. Show of hands, how many people in the room have used Canva? Okay, that's actually a lot more than I thought. That's good. That's awesome. So if you do any sort of presentations at all, I do a lot of these presentations. I used to start in PowerPoint. I now always start in Canva. It's so much easier to move things around, and they have a ton of templates. So if you don't know where to start, you can certainly go through a template. One other thing I'll mention here is if you are a 501c3, Canva is free. So if you're a nonprofit in the room, you can get these tools for free. Some of the tools that we use all the time are the background remover. So you can see, you probably noticed that guy if you've seen some of our YouTube videos. That's the thumbnail that I use sometimes. But you can click BG remover and it removes the background. Then they can take that, our marketing team, and they can throw it on a YouTube video. They can throw it wherever they need to. Canva integrates with a lot of AI apps natively. So you'll see it can create extra pictures and videos and all sorts of things. It does have a generation side of its own. So if you can't find what you're looking for, you can click generate your own. And I typed in a prompt of create a scene with galactic guardians floating in space. It created this. Now, this isn't exactly what I was thinking of. My prompt wasn't the best in the world. So you can obviously edit your prompt. You can try to rework it and say, hey, this is what I was looking for. This is what I want. But instead of that, you can use the next tool. So the next tool I'm going to show you, but I will forewarn you. Has anyone ever used Ideogram? I don't know, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Okay, no one. Be careful with this tool because it is a serious, serious time suck. You will find yourself stuck in there forever. Because it's like I can create an image on just about anything I want. And I mean, it is pretty instant. It is super fast. You can see some of the images down there at the bottom with the dog and the baby. I mean, it's like, it's really cool. Now, I put in here, I want a photo of Rocket the raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy using a computer. You can see it created 4 different pieces there, 4 different options. I chose the 4th one. It really is as simple, and this is the free version. It really is as simple as download. There we go. Now we've got the picture. Now, all of these images that you've seen here today, almost every single one came from Ideogram. Now, it does have some limitations on the free version. You can only, I think you can only create 10 pictures, something like that a day. But when we were doing this conference, we needed it so much, we paid the massive amount of, I think it's like $8 or $16 or something. I mean, we paid a little bit of money. It's really cheap, but it's super cool. I definitely recommend you checking it out. Even if you're not doing it for marketing purposes, maybe you've got a birthday party coming up. Maybe you've got something like that. You can easily create a flyer so easy now with exactly what you want. I've showed you a lot of these tools today, and they're all powerful in their own right. They can do a lot of really cool things. But what is the end goal, at least for me, and what I aspire to do from our marketing team is how these guys use the tools together. So you can use the tools separate if you would like. There's nothing wrong with that. But what is more powerful is if you can learn how to use these tools together. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I told you guys that we had this picture that I created, and I guess with my prompting skills, it created a Freddy Krueger Wooly Bully version of Star-Lord. So I sent this over to our marketing team and said, what can I do? I don't know what I did wrong. I mean, I gave them the prompt, and my marketing team immediately said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to use Copilot, or you're going to use ChatGPT. You're going to go in there, and you're going to ask the AI, you're going to ask the artificial intelligence, what is a good prompt to use to put into this other AI generator that will give me the most realistic picture? And the moment it did that, I came out with this. Now, this isn't perfect by any means. This isn't exactly what Star-Lord looks like in all the movies. But you can see it made a huge difference. At least he looks like a human now. So then I can take that prompt and then I can rework it. I can say, well, I want it a little more, I want Star-Lord a little more buff or whatever it may be. So you can play with that, but that is the absolute power of these tools, is if you don't know how to ask the prompt, the best prompt, it's kind of crazy to ask AI how to interact with AI in the best way, but that's what we did. So use these 6 tools. If you use these 6 tools, I really do think that you're gonna get some productivity, and just play around with them. I'll be here all day, and you guys almost certainly know my email, but definitely shoot me an email. I'd love to get in there with you, and we can talk about using these tools a little bit better if you have any questions. Thank you so much.